You're going to learn how I got a property to become an owner finance rental. And on that same transaction, the seller gave me a loan for free. So I'm going to tell you right now, I got a loan for free on a property with 0% interest. And now it is a cash flowing rental. And I'm going to break this one down as detailed as I can. So if you're interested in learning how to do creative financing or just hearing about my actual deals, you're in the right place. If this is your first time watching or listening, my name is Greg, and I've been a full-time investor now for 10 years. I've done 500 plus properties at this point. If you get value from this and you are watching on YouTube, do me a favor and like the video. It really means a lot when you like the video, and subscribe to the channel and share this with somebody. So let's talk about this property. This was a condo. I actually still own it as a rental right now. And it's down in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philly. Got this lead, I believe it was from text blasting back in the day. It's probably 2022, actually. And the guy was a, typical seller, wants to know what we can pay for the con. It was a condo in Delco. And, I was like, I don't know. The thing was probably worth at the time $105,000, $110,000 off the bone, probably max. So it was really not worth that much. It was a one-bed property. There's a renter inside. The owner didn't sound desperate or at all. So I think we lowballed him at like 50 or 60 grand. And he's like, absolutely not. So anyway, he kept kind of following up with us, and we followed up with him. And, I ended up getting him on the phone, and I said, listen, I could pay you more money, almost market value for this, if you're willing to carry the paper, i.e. finance me, right? Instead of me going out and getting a bank loan and, having to pay the bank every month. If you want to finance me, I'll pay you practically market value for this thing, as long as the numbers make sense. And he said, I would be down to do that. And the reason this guy was down to do that is he had a tenant inside. The tenant wasn't a great tenant, to be honest with you. They were a little sporadic with paying the rent, had a little bit of a rocky relationship with the tenant, and he didn't want to deal with it. He didn't want to try to get the tenant out. He didn't want to screw around with it. The property was outdated, needed work. It's just typical situation, tired landlord. And this guy was savvy. This guy was a mortgage broker, and he was not like a desperate knucklehead. So, he knew what was going on. He was like, yeah, I'd be willing to do that if you can buy it with a tenant inside. And, she's paying rent. It's a little inconsistent, but she's paying. And I said, okay, well, yeah, I could probably make that work. So we ended up agreeing to terms, and this is what happened. So I offered the guy $95,000. I said, I'll put down $12,500, and I want you to finance me $82,500 in the form of a first position seller finance mortgage, which means he's basically just going to become the bank. And I said, I'll make payments to you for 5 years. We'll do a 5-year balloon, which means in 5 years, I have to pay him off, whether I sell the house and pay him off in cash or refinance. So in 5 years, I'll pay you off. And every month, I will make a payment to you. So we drew up the note, and the way that we actually structured it, we changed it a little bit, is for the first 2 years, it's $400 a month. And then the final 3 years, it's $450 a month. So I actually get more principal pay down. And you're probably thinking, Greg, you paid market value for a property. You got to pay the seller now $400 a month for 2 years and then $450 a month for 3 years. How does that make any sense? And I'm going to tell you why. The guy gave me a loan for free. He literally loaned me money for free. And he loaned me money on an asset that pays for itself via the rent. To me, it's a no-brainer. I could keep it as a rental, which I did, and I can depreciate the property. So I'm like, why not? So here's how the math worked out. So I bought the property, gave him the $12,500, started paying on the note. The property rented at the time for $1,000. That was at the time. HOA on that property, $285 a month, all in with that's like worst case. And then the taxes and all that kind of stuff for I think they're like $250 a month, taxes and insurance or something like that. So there was $465, and then I owe the guy $400. He was making $65 in profit, which is nothing, but paying principal down. The only thing I'm interested in this property was paying down the freaking principal, because it's principal only. I'm not paying interest. So I didn't care that it was basically breaking even at $65 a month. That's how it started. Had that tenant there for probably about a year. She started kind of skipping out on the rent. So I decided at that point, I'm not going to renew her month-to-month lease, because I was like, you're not freaking paying the rent consistently. You're getting a good deal. It's $1,000 a month. Come on now. And anyway, she ended up moving out. We ended up, just not renewing the month-to-month lease. She moved out. All good. I was on the rental market for probably 3 months, 4 months. And it was slim pickings to get a good tenant. So then I ended up putting the property on the market for sale. I was planning to sell the property via 1031 exchange. And then we had a buyer. They wrote an offer at, I think it was $120,000 or something I think it was like 118 or 120. It was a decent offer. And then like 2 weeks before closing, they couldn't get the financing because of the HOA, which made no sense because the HOA, is fine from what I knew. So they canceled, and now it's back on the rental market. So now we're trying to get another tenant for $1,250. We have some prospects we're working, but like I said, it's slim pickings over there. It ain't Beverly Hills. So we're still working on getting a tenant. But assuming we get a tenant in the next month or so, which is reasonable, it'll go back to making, at this point, you got to subtract the $50 extra I'm paying principal. So it'll make like $150 a month, $200 a month now. I still got 3 years left on that note, and I got a loan for free. So what are the takeaways? Now, enough about my rambling rental stuff. What are the takeaways here? The takeaways are this. Sometimes you can still buy a property and pay market value if the terms are good, right? I wouldn't have bought this property if the guy wanted to collect like 7% interest. It wouldn't have made sense. But because he was willing to take back the note of, $400 a month principal only, and then $450 after 2 years, it was a no-brainer. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. There's enough spread between what the expenses are and what the rent is after paying the mortgage. It makes sense. It's a cash flowing asset. I've already depreciated it on my, tax return a couple of years ago, whatever. So the takeaway is, it's not easy to find these. And am I going to tell you right now, you're going to go out and after watch this video, you're going to get somebody to do a 0% note? Probably not, right? You're going to have to find, it's a needle in a haystack situation. Usually those are crappier properties and crappier areas, but that is what it is. But if you're dealing with a seller and they don't want to give their property away at a wholesale price, you should then start asking to see if they'd be willing to finance you. And then if you're going down the path of doing owner financing, try your best to go principal only, because it happens. I'm not the first person that bought a property principal only, and I'm certainly not going to be the last person to do it. So you got to ask. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And what this guy wanted was to be relieved from the bullshit of managing this property. That's what he wanted. And he wanted some income. And I gave him exactly what he wanted. And in exchange for that, what I wanted good terms, which in this case was a principal-only note for 5 years with a balloon, which is exactly what I got. So you got to just align the seller's interest with your offer. And if you're a good deal engineer, like I've became over the last 10 years, and I'm always working every day to become better, you can put deals together creatively. Is this my whole business? No. Do I do a few of these a year? Yes. Subject to owner finance, whatever. But you got to be a good deal engineer, and you got to figure out what the seller needs and wants and see how your offer and your terms can align with that. And then you can make these deals happen. And I hope you got value from this. And if you're in the Delaware area like this, or you're in the Hudson Valley, or you're in the Seattle area, and you have a house you want to wholesale to me, I'd love to buy it if the numbers make sense. Or if you have a house you want to JV with me and we can wholesale it together, I'd also love to do that. Send me your deals. My email is greg@velocityhousebuyers.com. My Instagram is @grego37, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.